Hi folks, just me, friendly neighborhood Walter Shepherd. I'm just going to do a little rant. I did one a few years ago about evolution, and since then it's got me thinking because I've been talking to a lot of evolutionists and people of the scientific community, and just going back and forth, commenting with people on that video I uploaded a number of years back. And to this date, the evolutionists have not given me a satisfactory answer. And when I ask that specific question, they skirt the issue, or they talk about something totally different or irrelevant, or they even start to scream and rant and even give me a couple of death threats. I've had a number of death threats, but then that's natural. When people feel backed into a corner, the instinct comes in to either take flight or to fight. And since they feel backed into a corner, they usually fight. Anyway, what I'm going to be talking about right now, or ranting on, really I will touch on the first 7 days of creation, because that takes a lot of faith. To believe, as much faith as it takes in to believe in evolution. But mainly I want to take a look about applying scientific principles and laws to the natural world that is in the Bible between the time of Adam and Eve and the flood, and a little bit after that. Okay, first of all, talking about the first 6 days of creation, when God created everything. He created the universe, all the quantum matter that's out there in the universe, and He created the planet Earth and all the quantum matter that's in there, all the atoms, all the molecules, rearranging them and creating them and making all the various life forms individually. Now, to start off, I would like to say, if we could take a camera or a telescope and look back to the first 6 days of creation, what I believe we would see in the span of a 24-hour period is something that looks like a time-lapse movie. So when God created the first forms of life, He started off creating tiny little cells, tiny little one-celled creatures. Then when He was happy with that, He created a multi-celled creature. And when He was happy with that, He created a variety of multi-celled creatures, still little things swimming in the water. And then after He was happy with that, He created larger multi-celled creatures with fins and legs and all sorts of claws and little crawly things that exist in the water. Then when He was happy with that, He started on the land. He started creating little small things like worms and then bugs. And each time He created a new form of life on the land and was happy with it, He moved on to something bigger and bigger until He got to the mammals, until He got to the primates, until He got to the carnivorous things, until He got the variety of creatures that there is, including the dinosaurs. So all those existed, created individually by the master of creation, the grand designer, the one who can take the quantum elements and all the atoms and molecules and rearrange them to make something that is alive and something that is unique on its own. So for the first 6 days, including man, if we could look at it, we would see all these things being created one at a time, one after the other, in a kind of time-lapse movie. And so, that's the first 6 days of creation, and then God rested on the seventh. And then afterwards, on the eighth, from there on, scientifically speaking, Adam and Eve, and all the way up to Noah, they lived on an earth that is totally different than what we know now. Right now, we human beings assume that the planet Earth had always had a blue sky visible to everybody, that the planet Earth had always revolved in a 24-hour cycle. It could be that the Earth was moving faster. It could be that the Earth was moving slower, and life developed quicker, life developed slower, or whatever it is. We have no idea. We make many assumptions based on the Earth that we see now. So, in terms of this particular discussion, Adam and Eve, and like I said, all the way up to Noah, they lived in a canopy. That the entire planet was one thick cloud covering. And if that is the case, that would mean that the Earth during that time would be a moisture-filled environment. And that would also mean that the sun's ultraviolet rays did not pelt the Earth as much as they do now. So with the canopy theory, that would mean, because there's so much moisture and that much less ultraviolet rays, people would naturally live longer. They would have longer lifespans, as the Bible tells us, because their bodies wouldn't decay as fast, because they're not being pelted with all these dangerous rays that come from the sun, and because moisture provides a lot of life and nutrients, the human body would live longer. And also, that would also mean that when something died, it would take so much longer for it to actually decay. So now, fast forward to scientists of these days trying to read and date any particular fossil or any particular dead set of bones. They're naturally going to get a different set of readings because the decay rate of matter right now is based on the planet Earth. It's based on the amount of ultraviolet rays that break down the flesh, that break down and cook the bones, or that solidify it in a fossilized period. So trying to measure dead matter based on the way matter decays now would have a different reading than matter during the days before Noah, when the decay rate was so much slower. I'm not sure if I'm making my point there. But anyway, so now getting back to the days between Adam and Eve and Noah, everybody lived much longer. There were still dinosaurs there. And eventually it got up to the point where the entire Earth is going to change. So now, in terms of this discussion, the canopy is still there when Noah is building the ark. Nobody at this point has ever seen the sun directly, because there's always been a cloud covering. During the day, they can see this bright spot pass over. That is the light the Bible talks about. The Bible doesn't say, and God created the sun on the first day. It just says from the point of view of the earth, it was light. And then there was a different kind of light at nighttime, which would be the moon. And so now Noah has finished building the ark. And so the waters that are beneath the earth, they come rushing up. The amount of pressure that the crust of the earth is pushing down on the waters that are below the earth. And so all the springs from below the earth, they come rushing up in this flood. And all the waters that are stored in the cloud, they come falling down. So the Bible tells us that those two things happened for 40 days and 40 nights. It didn't stop raining, and the waters from the earth kept flooding. And so while Noah was building the ark, the planet Earth did not have the same continental structure as it does now. Before the flood, all the continents were all connected. There were no large oceans. So that's why you can have one species in Australia and find a similar species in Europe, or a similar species in North America or South America as you do in Europe or Africa, because all the animals were able to travel all around. So that's why we find various fossils that are similar in different continents, because before the flood, the entire planet was all connected, was all one land mass. And so all the waters come up from the springs, all the waters fall down from the waters or from the air, and it floods the entire earth. And now, after the waters have stopped, the Bible tells us that God made the rainbow appear. And the rainbow first appeared after the waters receded, because the clouds no longer held that moisture. So now, for the first time, Noah goes outside and he sees a blue sky for the first time ever in his life. And he sees this really bright spot, and that is the sun. And so now, for the first time, all that direct sunlight is going to shine through all the suspended mist in the air, and it's going to create the very first rainbow. And then from that point on, because the people of the world are getting direct sunlight, now their lifespans are shorter because the UV rays are breaking down their body at a higher rate, and all decayed matter or all dead matter will decay at a faster rate. Plus, after the waters had receded and there was dry land, the Earth no longer had, or the Earth was no longer one large landmass. The Earth was no longer interconnected. So after the waters receded, what was left were two big oceans. And that's that. And that's the world that we know now. So from a scientific point of view, we only assume that the Earth had always had 5 continents. And biblically speaking, I'm saying no, there was one large continent that had a lot of lakes and a lot of seas, and never any large oceans. And that's about it. So that's it for my little evolutionary creation science rant. Is that before the flood, people could live longer because of the canopy that covered the earth and less sunlight. And then afterwards, lifespans were shortened because of all the UV light and the continents and whatnot. And I don't really know how to conclude this. I was just getting these points out because these are the points that I've always been making to other evolutionists, and they just can't see it, or they don't want to see it. They want to hold on to their scientific explanation, because if they believe in evolution, that means that there is no God, and that means they can continue to sin. And people want to hold on to their sin because they don't want to believe there's a God, because they don't want to face a judgment for their choices. And I think that's about it. I may do another evolutionary rant, or rant on evolutionarianism a little bit later on. There's still a few things that I need to ask these evolutionists, mainly about transitional fossils. If they say for sure that one animal type turned into a different animal type, I'm still waiting for the fossils to show a transitional species between here and then. And nobody in the scientific community can provide any evidence of one animal turning into a different kind of animal. So thanks. That's it. We'll talk to you later. Be a blessing wherever you are in internet land and YouTube world. My fellow servants out there, Jesus will be here soon. We'll see you somewhere in his kingdom over there, or maybe even somewhere up in the air. Okay, take care. Stay in prayer. Remember, Jesus rules.